So my name is Dan Burgess. I'm a co-writer of Stories for Life. I've been guiding this experimental inquiry with our fellow collaborators, Green Economy Coalition and the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, exploring the role our stories and narratives play in shaping our economic design. So we began asking questions, speaking to all kinds of folks, reading, listening to lots of thinking and ideas from around the world, ancient and modern, and bringing groups of creative beings together, curious folks on and offline, to kind of prototype things, to kind of help us make sense of all of this. And then COVID-19 hit us all, and we spent months hunkering down, trying to figure out what we'd learned and how it might be useful. And at the same time, witnessing how the pandemic was kind of showing really clearly how broken this current economic design is. So our world is experiencing multiple crises, and they are all interlinked. And we believe the economic design is the root cause. So we kind of weaved our learnings together with the work of many, many incredible thinkers and creators, and you'll find all of them within the Stories for Life offering as it is right now, which is online. It's 8 chapters. And we see this work really as an offering for these times. For folks who are working with stories in our cultures, which is really all of us, and it invites those, I guess, who are feeling the call to step into service right now, to play with it. You see, we've learned that the cultural narratives and the stories that weave those narratives are the things that shape and inform the design of human systems, like economies, industries, and politics. That's the way it works. And you'll hear much more about that from other speakers today. What if we could evolve those stories, those ways of seeing the world, which have dominated the last few hundred years, at least in Western cultures? What if we could evolve the stories of our relationship with the natural world and how we measure success? And what if creative cultures could help accelerate those critically urgent evolutions? This is our focus of Stories for Life and our invitation to anyone to come and play with it. I imagine our future ancestors and all beings are actually calling us into service right now. If we could just cultivate the courage and imagination to intentionally experiment every day with what could be. I'm going to pass over to Paddy in a second to unpack the Stories for Life work in much more detail, and then we'll hear from our guests. But I want to finish with this quote from Rudolf Barrow. He said, "When an old culture is dying, the new culture is created by those people who are not afraid to be insecure."
Most of us don't really know what the economy is or what it's for. We assume it's a fixed machine based on laws or a pot full of money, when really it's neither. The original meaning of the word is revealing. Eco means household, nemein means manage. So economics literally means household management, because as the crises suggest, we're not managing our household properly. It's on fire, polluted, flooding, full of rubbish. The parents are fighting and we are running out of food and water. We are extracting and using more resources than we can replenish, and doing so in a way that only really benefits a tiny fraction of life. This is a terminal condition. Why is this happening? Well, in a large part because of the stories we tell ourselves every day. We have been living according to a powerful belief that has sat at the heart of our economics, that we are separate from nature and each other. For so many of us, this feels wrong, but we feel powerless to stop it. We keep destroying nature, life, including our own, thinking there is no alternative, thinking that our economics is based on fixed laws like physics, when it isn't. It's just a design, something a few men came up with based on what they thought mattered at the time. The beauty of designs is that they can be redesigned, upgraded, and new economic designs are already out there waiting to be picked up. If we keep believing the old nonsense that maintains this deadly economic design, we will never see the new designs, which is why we need new stories now. Stories aren't frivolous entertainment. They are the coding that shapes what we believe, that shapes what we choose, who we are, the way we think, feel, and act every day. Together, several stories weave a broader narrative that forms the fabric of our reality. The reality about which new stories are then told, and so the cycle spins. As our friend and guest Ella Saltmarshe puts it, narratives are the soil from which everything grows. So we need to be working at that level to effect change. The narrative of separation has deep roots in Western civilization, woven by the stories we've been telling ourselves for hundreds of years, from Judeo-Christian stories through to early science and our culture today. But it's a narrative that simply holds no basis in reality. And yet the facts suggest otherwise. There are more non-human cells in our bodies than human ones. In our gut, on our skin, are billions of organisms. In fact, there are more organisms in one person's gut than there are stars in the galaxy. We are individuals like a leaf on a tree is an individual. Beyond that, we are intimately entangled in the web of life, a web that we depend on entirely for our survival. We are not suggesting any of this, we are noticing it. Noticing the voices from all across the map whose quotes and work populate the stories.life website. Voices who point to an emergence, or perhaps a re-emergence, of a healthier narrative that can unravel and replace this false, harmful narrative of separation. The narrative of interconnection that says that we are interconnected with nature and each other. A narrative of entanglement, of interbeing, of relationship, which is emerging now partly because science, the Western channel for truth, as we've been saying, is revealing it, partly because many of those who've carried it all along are screaming it now in desperation, and partly because, especially in the wake of COVID, people have had a moment to reflect and realize that what matters to them is a kinder, healthier, fairer, greener, more joyful and more united world. A moment to realize that human and planetary health go hand in hand. To do this, we see two places to intervene at the level of stories. First, spot and drop what we call the horror stories that maintain the narrative of separation. And second, at the same time, spot, create, and carry the love stories that can weave the narrative of interconnection. A two-loop process of hospicing the old and nourishing the new. The first harmful horror story is the story that nature is our slave. Only 4% of animals are now wild. We have enslaved the rest to do our bidding, trapped, often suffering in cages as our food machines. The pandemic, which we are still struggling with, reveals the danger of this. COVID-19 is likely the result of habitats being destroyed and animals being kept together in tightly packed cages, because we view them as commodities, failing to recognize that they are in fact our community. Because we are nature. We are part of it, not apart from it. Nature is you, me, your friends, your loved ones, their loved ones. Nature is our family. This is the true story, the accurate story, and this is the healthy love story that we all need to tell. But our stories today are so often about an excess of nature, or dangerous nature, threatening nature, nature that we need to capture, conquer, control, destroy, defeat. So it doesn't really hit us that we have destroyed 60% of animal populations since ABBA first sang Money, Money, Money. The second harmful horror story, which goes hand in hand with the first, is the story that productivity alone leads to success. So productivity matters above all else. This story means we prioritize GDP, gross domestic product, an appealing metric because it's so simple, one big number to rule them all. But it's deadly because it is too simple, because its simplicity means that it is indiscriminate. It does not account for the true cost of our activity, the impact we have on our household. It does not punish bad behavior, behavior that destroys our ability to live. In fact, it often rewards it. Creating pollution using fossil fuels counts twice towards GDP, first by polluting and then by cleaning it up afterwards. The damage to nature and our health in the process simply doesn't matter. We do not pay that cost. A murder adds $1 million to GDP. Guns, bombs, addictive drugs, they all add to GDP. This design literally values death more than life. Trees, which play such a vital role in maintaining the web of life, are worth more dead than alive, according to GDP. This is not true growth, not true profit, because it ignores the true costs. It is insane. The economy is the root cause of our crises. It is stupid, disconnected from our science, wisdom, and common sense. A deadly design maintained by a harmful narrative of separation, but one that can be redesigned, guided by a healthy narrative of interconnection. If we can tell these stories for life, we can all play our part in designing an economy in service to life.
So my background is this weird mix of climate and systems change nerd and writer of drama for stage and screen. And over the last 5 years, I've been bringing these fields together to really look at the role of culture and narrative in shifting systems. But if you really want to change a system, then you want to be intervening at the level of purpose. You want to be changing what the goal of a system is. And the way that you do that is through narrative, because the goals and the purpose of a system will be embedded in narrative. Capitalism, the narrative of capitalism seeps through our lives in an infinite number of ways. So if we want to be shifting systems, we need to be working at this level of narrative. What changes when we understand ourselves to be ancestors? I started asking this question to more people. And then I teamed up with a friend of mine, Beatrice Pembroke, and we decided to ask this question a bit more intentionally. We set up something called the Longtime Project. Initially, we gathered people around that question. So our approach was, how do we grow community around a question rather than how do we impose our answer? And really, what we were curious about was like, is there anything sticky here? Can we, if we change the way people feel about the long-term future, can we change the way they act in the present to protect it? We realized that the work that we were doing was about how do we get people to create an emotional connection to the world beyond our lifetimes. So really what we're talking about is care for the future. What we are trying to do is to get people to feel a sense of kinship and care for the billions of lives that have not yet come, for all of those humans and non-humans who have yet to be born. And others on this call are going to be talking about radical kinship in different contexts, radical kinship with the non-human world, radical kinship from those already living the climate catastrophe today.
What all of these crises are showing us is that we are truly deeply interconnected with each other and with the rest of the living world, and that they can be a profound threat for the well-being of humanity. But what I think is really important to see is how these crises are showing us that they arise from the very systems that people have created. And we are the first generation to see this and to see that actually we need new solutions if we want to tackle these problems, because last century's economic theories were simply not designed to do so. And let's start by recognizing that we have inherited a degenerative system where industries take Earth's resources, we make them into stuff, we use them for a little bit, sometimes only once, and then we throw them away. Now, this system of take, make, use, lose is precisely what is pushing us out of planetary boundaries. And so we need to turn these arrows and to make them into a system that is regenerative and cyclical by design, where resources are used far more carefully, far more creatively, far more collectively. But this is also one part of the story, because we have also inherited economies in the 20th century that were designed in many ways through technology, through regulation, in ways that tended to concentrate opportunity and value in the hands of the few. We need to create economies that are distributive by design, that they share opportunity and value with all who co-create it. And so we truly believe that the 21st century economy will be practice first and theorized later. And this is the way we are contributing to it. So we're working with change makers worldwide in communities, education, cities, business, governments, and we are co-creating open source tools that are turning these ideas into action. And we are also making or putting a lot of effort in making the stories of how pioneers are using these ideas and adapting them so that they can inspire others.
I am reminded of 4 young activists from my home city, Durban, who were murdered for standing up to injustice. The names were June Rose Kotoza, Lindiwe Mthembu, Makosi Nuyoka, and Lenny Naidu. Lenny was one of my closest friends and comrades. I thought about the last conversation I had with Lenny just over a year earlier, where he'd asked me this philosophical question: what is the biggest contribution we can make to the cause of justice? I replied, well, that's easy, giving your life. And he said, you mean going and participating in a demonstration, getting shot and killed and becoming a martyr? I said, I guess so. Our people at that time were being killed almost on a daily basis in South Africa, with us spending many weekends attending funerals of people killed by the regime. However, Lenny said, that's the wrong answer. It's not about giving your life, but giving the rest of your life. Some people say the social contract, which is essentially the terms of the relationship between our leaders and the people or governments and citizens, is broken. From the way it is sometimes spoken about, you'd think it's just been broken recently. In reality, the social contract has been broken for a very long time. It's always been broken for indigenous people, for women and young people, for people in the global south because of the economic dominance that still remains in the hands of the so-called developed countries or the global north, as for many others as well. One of the biggest issues with activism today is that we do not speak the same language as ordinary people anymore. We have forgotten how to communicate with people and have been too concerned with putting energy in the wrong places in our society. Activism must learn to humble itself, to listen and learn how people are understanding the world around them and how they are communicating their ideas. One of the errors that activism has made has been that we are focused too much on what people don't have and focus far too little on what people have. We are focused on how people are disempowered, excluded, marginalized, oppressed, and repressed, all of which is real and painful. However, we must also balance that by looking at what power people have. Because unless we can understand that power and harness it for justice, we do not have a chance to win.
We've come so far away. Humanity has come so far away from how healthy natural systems work. How do we change the story of human progress? By working with nature. And it is just a story. We've come to live through a story that has become very destructive to our society, our planet, and perhaps it's polarizing people in strange ways. Humanity's guiding principle is not only growth, but what I would define as maximization, making it bigger, making it go faster, making it go more and more and more. And our measures of success are things like gross domestic product. But nature doesn't work like that. Nature works through a process called optimization, which is that, yes, things are incredibly competitive and fight for their own lives, but somehow, magically, they keep a healthy shape to the whole. So there's something about shifting away from maximization to optimization. But in nature, the more you look, the more you realize everything is connected, everything is constantly in a dynamic exchange with the other. And we only have to think about our bodies. The breath we take right now came from sea creatures and trees. The breath that we give back out to the earth goes back to trees. The food we eat is passed through our bodies. The water that we drink now was a cloud only yesterday. When we take time to slow down and notice and observe the patterns of life, or to just be, a different kind of knowledge emerges. It speaks to me to the fact that we have to let go of some of our thinking. We have to let go of feeling like we have answers, and perhaps still do that, but embrace a different quality of knowledge that comes from connecting with how life and nature's patterns flow. The Taoists, who I often refer to or look to in my own work, had a principle which said, we are born fundamentally perfect. We're born fundamentally perfect, and we've been given the gift of life. And if we could just cultivate that sense culturally, if we could draw out that sense that we belong, that we're good enough, that we're part of nature, and that we've been given this gift of life, then culturally, I think things would feel very different in the world.
So if you can imagine a world where the health and well-being of all humans and all life around us was how we measured success, where we worked in collaboration with the natural world, where human economic systems are in harmony with natural ecosystems. And the thing is, what's different about now is the solutions are here. The tools are here. People are doing it. People are waking up everywhere to the destructiveness of these current systems that we've all been a part of. Whatever you do, don't go back to sleep.